The Silver Crown by Robert C. O'Brien, Chapter 22, The Dungeon. The boy's voice read, Aesop's Fables, the smart little horsefly. Once there was a smart horsefly. He had a very sharp bite. He liked to bite horses and make them jump. The fly was so quick and clever that the horses could never catch him. That's not like any Aesop's Fables I ever read, thought Ellen, following in her book. The horsefly hated people even worse than horses. He hated nice, happy people most of all. One day, Mr. Brown, Mrs. Brown, and their 4 jolly children went on a picnic. The horsefly hid in the car. He hid under the seat. Soon they were speeding along the highway at 60 miles an hour. Then the little horsefly zipped out from under the seat. He bit Mr. Brown first on one eye, then on the other. "Oh!" cried Mr. Brown. "Oh, oh! Look, look, look! I cannot see!" The little horsefly laughed and flew out the window. Mr. Brown could not steer the car. He drove into the wrong lane. He hit 3 other cars. Crash, crash, crash. Mr. Brown and Mrs. Brown were killed. So were their 4 jolly children and 18 other nice, happy people. Moral: a little damage at the right time and place does a lot of damage, Ellen thought. That's terrible. That's the worst fable I ever heard. She felt like shouting it. She looked at the other pages in her book. On each page there was a story or a rhyme. All were horribly twisted and distorted. On one page she read, Mary had a little lamb. Its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go. So far, so good, she thought, but then it followed her to school one day, which was against the rule. It bit the teacher on the leg and kicked her off the stool. That's wrong! Hit the teacher, all the children cried, and each of them picked up a rock and stoned her till she died. Ellen was aghast. What kind of lessons were these? What kind of horrible school? But 72-9B had now finished reading about Mr. Brown and the horsefly. The teacher spoke again. You, he said, 75-1B, read page 15. He was a small boy with dark hair in the far corner of the room. From where she sat, Ellen could hardly see him. She glanced at the title on page 15. Peter Pan, a brave boy who hated grown-ups. Peter Pan was one of her favorite stories. She shuddered to hear how it would turn out in this awful book. The boy began to read. The voice was Otto's. Ellen leapt for joy at the sound. She had found him. Without thinking, she sprang out of her seat. Her book fell to the floor with a thump. She banged against her desk. The whole thing, desk, chair, and all went crashing over. Ellen stood beside them in dismay. The teacher looked at her with cold, dark eyes. He walked over to her as all the children stared. He stood before her. I think, he said, that you are out of tune. Ellen had no idea what out of tune meant. Still, she must deny it. Oh, no, sir. She said I slipped, that's all. She could not look at him, but tried to right the fallen desk. She was trembling. Furthermore, he said, I don't seem to have a number for you. No, sir, she began. I just got here. There hasn't been time. The teacher spoke sharply to the new girl in front of Ellen. What's your number? The girl answered without hesitation. My number is 22G. Correct, said the teacher. Ellen tried to cover up. Mine is 23G, she said. I came in just before her. The teacher went to his desk and checked in a book that lay on it. There is no 23G, he said. He pushed a button on the wall behind his desk. The jig was up. Within seconds, or so it seemed to Ellen, 2 heavy-shouldered, muscular teenage boys hurried into the room, looking this way and that, like hunting dogs. Ellen was still standing. The teacher pointed his chin at her and nodded. Without a word, they gripped her, one at each elbow, though not roughly, and led her away. As she left, she thought of something. She was caught. What could she lose? That is not an Aesop's fable, she said, addressing not the teacher, but the other children. They just made it up. It's not real. They stared at her with blank eyes, except that in the other corner of the room she thought she saw Otto give a familiar smile of recognition. The 2 boys steered her from the room, down the corridor, through a door, down a stairs, down another corridor to another stairs. This one was a narrow, dark spiral stairway, like a corkscrew in a bottomless well, plunging deep into the rocky earth beneath the castle. They made 3 complete turns down the spiral and stopped at a circular landing surrounded by doors. Ahead of them, the stairs led down still deeper into blackness, but they chose one of the doors instead. Another corridor, smaller, narrower, arched ceilings, so dark Ellen had to peer to see where she was going. An iron door with a small, square barred windows. They produced a key, unlocked the door, and pushed her inside, locked it, and walked away, their footsteps rattling off into the distance like echoes in an empty subway. Ellen was alone. The room she stood in was so dark that at first she could not tell how big it was. She stood still inside the door, not daring to move for fear of bumping into something. Slowly her eyes adjusted, and in a few minutes she saw 4 walls, 3 of rough concrete, the other, the rear wall, of natural stone. She had furniture, a bed with a stiff straw mattress and 1 blanket, a straight wooden chair. The room was 5 paces from front to back, 6 paces from side to side. The only door was the iron one she had entered. It was a cell. She was in a dungeon. She was a prisoner, and so far she had learned only one useful thing. Otto was number 75-1B, whatever that meant. She sat on the edge of the bed. She had, she now realized, got herself into a dreadful mess. She was locked up and helpless, and it was her own fault. Meanwhile, Otto, apparently equally helpless, was upstairs being taught the most sickening lies. It suddenly dawned on her. They were teaching those children to be evil. They were teaching that bad was good and good was bad, but why? What was the purpose? And why had she not the sense to get away, to leave while she was still free? Surely, if she and Aunt Sarah went to the police, they would arrest the people who ran this place. They had no right to lock her up like this, or had they? After all, it was she who had trespassed. It was their place. They could claim they thought she was a thief, but she wasn't. Not that it made any difference, since they didn't have to claim anything to anybody. They had her. And all she had wanted was to help Otto. The more she thought about it, the more indignant she got. Gradually, the fear she had felt gave way to anger. Somehow or other, she was going to get out of here, and get Otto out too. What one is supposed to do when one is locked in a cell, she recalled, is to inspect every square inch of the walls, ceiling, and floor and find a loose brick, a sliding panel, or a cleverly concealed tunnel dug by some unknown earlier occupant, or listen for a faint tapping on the wall, a signal from another prisoner who was ready to escape. She started her inspection immediately, and, to her own surprise, she did discover 2 things, neither of them, however, likely to be much help in escaping. One was that the side walls of the room did not quite reach all the way to the ceiling. She could not tell just how wide a gap there was because it was too high up. Far higher, alas, than she could jump or climb, but there was definitely a gap on each side. Probably, she guessed, for ventilation. And through one of these came part of the light that kept her... Excuse me. Came part of the light that kept her cell from being completely dark. It was a faint glow, if perhaps there was a light in the next room and she was getting a reflection from it. This illumination, plus a feeble glow that filtered it through the barbed window in her door, was all the light her room had. Considering this, it was surprising that she could see it all. The rear wall was the reason. It was made chiefly of jet black stone, but mixed with it here and there were patches of the same sparkling material she had seen in the walls of the cave. Even in this dim light it glowed faintly, and when she examined the wall inch by inch, she realized that it was not a man-made wall. There were no seams, no blocks. It was solid. How had they ever cut through it to shape these rooms and these long corridors? Then she heard a faint tapping. It was on the door, not the wall, a timid, breathless kind of knock. A trick, just the way an executioner would knock so you would not be forewarned when you opened the door and saw the hooded figure with the sharp, curved-bladed axe. Ellen crouched behind the chair. They would not fool her. The knock came again. But when the voice spoke, it was the voice of a girl. "Can I come in?" "Who are you?" "Genevieve. I'm from the next room." Ellen left her crouch and looked through the bars. On the other side was the thin, pale face of a girl with light blue eyes. Her hair hung wispy and unhealthily around her shoulders. Ellen said, "I can't open the door. It's locked." "I can. I have a key." "A key? Who was this girl?" Ellen turned crafty. She waited just inside the door. "Open it." "I can't unless you promise to stay in." "Why not?" "They told me not to." So she was one of them. "What do you want?" "Nothing, just to talk." "Okay, come on in." "You won't try to come out?" "No." What could she lose? If the girl didn't open the door, she could certainly not get out. The lock clicked, the door opened, and the girl entered. Anyway, she said, it wouldn't do any good. There's a bigger door at the end of the hall, and it's locked too. She was the thinnest, palest, sickliest, saddest-looking girl Ellen had ever seen. She was older than Ellen, perhaps 14. She sat on the edge of the wooden chair. You live in the room next door? Ellen asked, greatly puzzled. Yes. What's your name? Ellen. So, what are you, a prisoner? Sort of. I'm a trustee. What's that? It means I can have a key, and I can help with some of the work, but I can't go upstairs except when they send for one. I'll be bringing you your meals, I expect, and I'll show you where the bathroom is. It's down the hall. But why are you down here? What did you do? I'm out of tune, so you must be too. That's what the man said, a teacher. What's it mean? You don't know? I don't know anything. I just got here. It means the machine doesn't work on you. What machine? The machine in the tower, the Hieronymus machine. There was that name again. Who is Hieronymus? The king. King of what? Genevieve's face grew cloudy. King of... I don't know exactly. He's just the king. He must be king of some place. I don't know. Anyway, I didn't see any machine. Oh, you don't see it? She leaned over and whispered in Ellen's ear. But I did see it one time. What does it do? I don't understand it exactly myself, but it's something like a radio station, only it doesn't broadcast music and stuff. It broadcasts feelings. Feelings? What kind of feelings? All kinds? Any kind the king wants it to? You know those black paths outside? Yes, I saw them. Most people, when they get on those paths, can feel what the machine wants them to do, and they have to do it. They want to do it. They're in tune, and she added sadly, but it doesn't work on me. Me either, Ellen said. I didn't feel a thing. But that explained how the other children had known so quickly where to go and what to do, and why they had not talked at all. They were hypnotized. It was some kind of hypnotism machine or telepathy machine. Obviously, it must work inside the castle, too. She asked Genevieve. It works all through the castle, Genevieve said. It works through some kind of black stuff that's in the stones here, but in the classrooms they can turn it off or up or down. The teacher does it. I wonder why. I think it's because you can't learn things very well when it's turned on. You can't think well enough. I did fine in the classes. When the class was over and they turned it back on, I never knew what to do, so I have to stay down here, she added rather wistfully. But they think I can learn. I get treatments twice a week. I hope I can. You hope you can? Ellen was incredulous. But it's awful. The whole thing is terrible. Why do you want to? Because they'll never let me go outside with the others if I don't. You don't know how sick you get of staying down here. How long have you been here? I'm not sure, but more than a year. A year? No wonder she looked so pale and sick. Ellen leaned over and took Genevieve's hand and spoke very softly. Why not just get out altogether? That's what I'm going to do. At least I'm going to try. But Genevieve had no chance to answer, because just then there came another knock on the door. End of chapter 22.